Okay, so I have to admit that I'm not very spiritual. When I was growing up and it was time for Christmas Eve service, I was excited about the Christmas Eve service because I knew the pastor wasn't going to preach as long on that night as he typically did on a Sunday morning. Don't get your hopes up tonight. No, I do want to spend a few minutes talking about this moment and why we gather together to remember this moment, and I want to talk about it in terms of a place. There are some places that are just important. And since it's Christmas and we're surrounded by calories, let's talk about food for just a few moments. Right? New Haven, Connecticut was the place the hamburger was invented. In 1900, somebody went to Louis' Lunch and ordered a meat puck between two pieces of bread. Doesn't that sound appetizing? And that's the first hamburger that was served. And now 125 years later, you can still go to Louis' Lunch and order it exactly like it was ordered in 1900. The importance of a place. Hot dog was invented in Coney Island, New York. Pizza was invented in Naples, Italy. The French fry came to be in Belgium. And the potato chip was first invented in Sarasota, New York. I think we have covered every major health food group here tonight. The importance of a place, something maybe historical happened, maybe even something eternal. So listen, I've been doing Christmas Eve now here for 25 years. And I would think in that time that I've exhausted every Christmas account, every angle of every story, until I stumbled on the minor prophets earlier this year. 12 really strange named individuals at the end of the Older Testament. And for every minor prophet, 12 of them, there's at least 2 prophecies about Jesus. So here's my hunch. My hunch is that one of the gospel writers really liked the minor prophets because when he tells his story of Jesus, and it's Matthew, in Matthew chapter 2, he quotes the minor prophets not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 prophecies from the minor prophets that Jesus fulfilled at the very beginning of his story. And here's what those 3 prophecies all have in common. They're all about a place. They all pinpoint a place on the map where something important would take place. And it's not just God showing off his atlas skills. It's God saying, these places will tell you something about the person who is coming for you. So let's retrace the steps of Mary and Joseph in a few minutes tonight. They both started out in Nazareth. They had their plans to marry, to start a family, but an angel interrupted those plans, and now Mary would be pregnant by the Holy Spirit. And not only did an angel interrupt, but also Caesar Augustus, who called for a census, meaning that when Mary was great with child, she and Joseph had to go back to the ancestral home in Bethlehem. And here's where Matthew points out the prophecy from Micah chapter 5 that says, "But you, Bethlehem, you are the place where the king will be born." So there's a young mother who is trying to teach her 18-month-old daughter how to be a little more independent and to entertain herself. So every night while she was making dinner, she would put her 18-month-old in a playpen, let her play by herself while she went and made dinner. So one night she does this, and the grandfather is there. And so the mother leaves, goes into the kitchen. The baby just starts crying, and then the mother hears the baby stop crying suddenly. She goes back into the living room and discovers the grandfather has taken the baby out and is holding her. "Dad, I'm trying to teach her how to be more independent. Put the baby back." He does. She goes back into the kitchen. The baby cries again. The baby suddenly stops crying. She comes back in knowing what has happened. The grandfather again is holding the baby. "Dad, I'm serious. Put her down and don't take her out of the playpen again." She marches into the kitchen. The baby starts crying. Suddenly the baby stops crying. She is fuming. She marches back in, and the grandfather had gotten into the playpen. The grandfather's the hero of that story. I don't care how you slice it. Okay. Bethlehem was the place where God got into our planet with us. An important place, and a prophesied place. But it's more than just about geography. It is about what Bethlehem represents. It was the hometown of David. In fact, the prophecy from Micah 5 says, "But you, Bethlehem, are not least among the towns of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler, a king, who will shepherd my people, Israel." That place tells us something about the person that Jesus is king. So there's another king at play. His name was Herod, and he wasn't crazy about sharing his power. In fact, he was somewhat paranoid. And so learning that another king had been born who might usurp his throne, he sets out to hunt down the Christ child. And Mary and Joseph, being warned in a dream, they now go and seek refuge in Egypt. And here Matthew drops another prophecy, this time from Hosea, this time about another place. Hosea 11:1, "Out of Egypt I called my son." So Egypt and what happened there during the time of Moses was the defining story of God's people in the Older Testament. It's where God's people endured slavery for 400 years. It's also the place from which God was experienced as their deliverer. God who delivers us from slavery. By the way, if we're not careful, we can still live lives of slavery today. Sin continues to overpromise and underperform. Sin promises to set us free until we discover we're addicted. Sin promises to fulfill us, but just leaves us empty, wanting more, and higher doses of the same thing. Sin promises to make us happy, but left to ourselves, we just start to live lives of misery. I want you to hear, out of Egypt, God still calls his people. And Jesus Christ has come to be our deliverer. By the way, if you're looking for a last-minute Christmas gift for me, I like the Ford Bronco. Just saying. Your kids want Jesus, I want a Ford Bronco. I told you I wasn't very spiritual. Yeah. At least I'm not going to pretend to be very spiritual, right? So, 100 years ago, there weren't Ford Broncos around, but there was a Duesenberg. The Duesenberg was the nicest car out there. It was a luxury vehicle, gold-plated hood ornament, chrome all around, nicest wheels, interior plush carpet. Except Duesenberg was a big word for a lot of people to say, so they just started using a shorthand. Boy, it's a doozy. Car's been forgotten. We still use the word. Can I tell you something? This is a real doozy. If you're enslaved, there's a deliverer. Out of Egypt, I call my son. But then there's a third prophecy and a third place. After Mary and Joseph stay in Egypt for a while, Herod dies. They move back into the Jewish homeland. They decide to settle in Bethlehem, but because of other political maneuverings outside of their control, they decide it's not safe to be there, so they move back to Nazareth, where the whole story started. They come back full circle, yet changed people. And here's where Matthew calls on the third prophecy, this time from Zechariah 3. It says, "He grew up in Nazareth, for it says, he shall be called a Nazarene." Zechariah 3:18. There's a problem with that, though, because in Zechariah's day, several hundred years before Jesus, there was no such place as Nazareth. It didn't exist yet. He doesn't actually use the word Nazareth. He uses a word that sounds like Nazareth. If you could imagine this, imagine you and I could time travel, and if we jumped into a time machine and went back to the Continental Conference in 1776, where they were signing the Declaration of Independence, and they say, "Oh, where are you from?" And we say, "We're from Tulsa, Oklahoma." Oklahoma did not exist. Tulsa was not even on the map. So how can Zechariah give a prophecy about a place that doesn't exist? Well, I can give you the long explanation or the short explanation. Here's the short one. The prophecy that Jesus fulfilled basically boils down to this. He was somebody, the somebody, who came from nowhere. Nowhere special. Not even a blip. Other people wouldn't be able to find it on a map like most towns in Arkansas. Hard to find. That's my annual Arkansas joke. You're welcome. You didn't laugh at the Don Quixote joke, so I'm going to double down on that one. Nowhere. But somebody comes from nowhere. So you probably have never heard of Gander, Newfoundland. It was originally designed as an airport for planes to refuel going from the United States to Europe. Back in the day when jet fuel wasn't as refined and engines weren't as complex and fuel efficient as they are, to fly from New York to Paris would require you to land on the eastern border of Canada, refuel in Gander, Newfoundland, and then fly the rest of the way. But as fuel efficiency took off, by the way, you have flown over Gander, Newfoundland, you just didn't need to refuel. Now nobody stops there. It's no longer important. Except it was on September 11th, 2001. When terrorists attacked the United States, air traffic was shut down completely. There were 5,000 people in the air coming to the United States, and they needed a place to go for refuge, Gander, Newfoundland. And the people of that small town rolled out the yellow carpet, the red carpet, some carpet, they rolled it out. Yellow carpet, where did that come from? Red means you're welcome, yellow means stay on the plane. They rolled out the red carpet, they entertained them, they hosted it in their homes, they gave them tours. Gander, Newfoundland is nowhere except if you're in need. So tonight, if you're in need, I want you to look for someone. He comes from nowhere. Jesus Christ is still king. You know what? Since Jesus came, there have been emperors and prime ministers and presidents, and they come and go. He's still king. Sin still overpromises and underperforms. Jesus is still a deliverer. In a world that is dark and divided and full of discord, Jesus is still the light of the world and can be the light of life. That's why we do this every Christmas Eve. We take light from this candle and we share it with one another. And so I want to encourage you tonight, as you receive the light, would you take just one of those words that we talked about and lift a prayer to the Lord. Jesus, thank you for being my king. Jesus, I need you to be my deliverer. Jesus, I need you to be the light in the world and the light of my life. I'm going to ask our staff and our volunteers to come. I'm going to share this light with them. They will share it with you. And would you receive this light in the name and in the Spirit of Jesus Christ, who is light of the world?